ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get rocking and rolling. Choose Recovery has a couple of groups starting with Hallie Roderick. She is one of our coaches, and she also works with the Worth program. She is amazing. And she has a group starting. It's titled, So I've Decided to Stay After Infidelity, Now What? It's a small group coaching with her. It's limited to only 4 women. So you're still getting the group experience, but when you're in such a small group, you get a lot of individualized support. So that starts September 12th. If you're interested in that, you can go to chooserecoveryservices.com. And then she also has another group. This I think is so cool. I'm just going to read about it and then we'll go from there. But it's called Prepared to Thrive. And it's group coaching for engaged or newlywed couples who are ready to create healthy relationships. So basically, how to be healthy, what healthy looks like. A lot of couples who are starting in serious relationships don't really know how to connect and what healthy looks like. And maybe that was never modeled for them, or they just need those skills. So it comes with, she has done a special training called Prepare and Enrich to be able to run this course. And so her doing this course, you get a full, super in-depth couples assessment. You get a one-on-one session, and then you also have 11 coaching sessions. So that also starts in September. If you're in this situation, or if you know of any couples who are engaged or newlyweds who this could benefit, feel free to share that. And I think that's it for my announcements. Luke, anything you can think of?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So just a couple of things about tonight's webinar. We do this once a month. The reason Luke and I do this is when we were going through our own journey of healing 8 years ago, we were able to do a group together, the 2 of us. And the couple who was running it had been through a similar situation with addiction and betrayal. And it was really healing for each of us to be able to hear from the other person, and to also be able to experience listening and learning in the same environment. And then we could go and talk about it. And so we have always wanted to create something that offers a place where couples can come together. Now, you don't have to be in a couple. You don't have to have both of you here to listen, but we did want to offer that. So couple of things you'll notice when we have a webinar like this, nobody can see you. We can't even see you. You're just stuck looking at Luke and I. So that's all you get. But if you do put questions in the chat, people can see your name. If you would like to ask questions.
So somebody just put in the Q&A that the chat is disabled, and I didn't do that. So I don't know why that is. Is everybody experiencing that?
I only see host and panelists, Luke. I don't see where you can send it to everybody.
I didn't change anything. Sorry to interrupt your flow, Alana.
No, that's okay.
Okay. I'm not sure if, yes, it's disabled. Okay, I'm getting several people that are saying it's disabled. So I guess that will be the place where you would normally comment to each other, right, Alana? So,
yeah. So unfortunately, then tonight you can send Luke and I messages and questions through the Q&A, but it looks like we'll have to do some back end figuring out before next month.
if I can figure it out right now, I will, but I'll let you know if it's fixed. Otherwise, we'll just make sure the chat's up and live next time.
Okay. So if you do have questions, please put those in the Q&A. That helps Luke and I stay organized, and we can kind of put them in order. Typically, we get a ton of questions at the end, and then we're kind of scrambling to get through those questions. I love when you guys, when each of you put questions in there, because I feel like that's where our conversation really picks up. We can teach you tools and talk at you, But a lot of these tools, you can also go read a book, you can listen to a podcast. So we love the back and forth when we can get it, or we love where you have a really direct question. Even in the email that it sent out, it will say, hey, if there's any topics you want covered, let us know. And 99% of what we get are topics that it's like how to heal from betrayal trauma, how to create trust, which is good. And we can talk about that. But when you give us a specific question, we can really dive deep into that. And that makes for a really rich conversation. So I think that's all I have, Luke. Are you ready for me to turn it over to you?
Yeah. Yep. Let's do it. And thank you, Alana. And by the way, I actually did have one thing to say on Alana. I mean, on Hallie's course, the thing Alana just announced. I've seen that assessment. It is solid. So really, really valuable, at least from my perspective, of the type of insight you get from the assessment alone. And then Hallie's really good at what she does. If you haven't had a chance to be around her. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's talk about, I'm going to give you 3 terms that we use. So in the not in the Q&A, but the stuff that's been posted to us, when you guys sign up for this or you get a chance to be invited to this, there's that place where you can put in questions. This last conversation that we had last month around sexual reintegration, sounded like some of you didn't really want to leave that conversation. And there was some stuff that came up that was, I know, hard and good from some of the feedback that I heard. But today we're going to talk a little bit about, I don't know for how long, 3 different ways I've heard of it. I've heard it as an abstinence contract. I've heard of it as taking sex off the table. I've heard of it as sex fast. There are different ways to put it. I'm not a big fan of the term sex fast because I think maybe I just have bad experiences being in my faith and my religion doing fasts. And now maybe I'm just jaded, but I have negative connotation associated with it. But we're just going to talk a little bit about what it is and what it is not. And I'm going to lead the conversation, but Alana's going to jump in here and as we talk about it. So first of all, what are these things? Abstinence contract, taking sex off the table, sex fast. What is it? Basically, it's when physical intimacy at any level is removed from the relationship, but often other levels of intimacy are meant to be there. So let me just repeat myself. It's when physical intimacy, and you'll notice physical intimacy is not just sex, but it could be types of different physical, it could be even hugs, kissing, holding hands, and it's removed from there. And the main purpose and the reason for this, the why, and I'm going to speak to the men's side of this, is because he's had a history of sexual misbehavior, but lack of sexual self-mastery. So it's pretty easy to define. I shouldn't say easy. It's not very hard to define pornography as things that they don't want to do. But what's not as clear is what's unhealthy in the physical relationship itself. So what do you do to get healthy? You pull the whole thing out to really seek to understand what healthy looks like. So this, again, the terminology I don't like is sex fast, which is so a man can get a time to recognize what's unhealthy before he starts to integrate things back in there. Alana, you want to comment on any of that as far as what it is?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Words matter and words hold power. And so the term sex fast, I think of a period of fasting, this period of like waiting and holding back and sacrificing until you can have it again. And in a lot of religious connotations, during a period of fasting can be a really learning and growing and spiritual thing. So if you want it, if sex fast, that term speaks to you, awesome, run with it. Celibacy contract, just taking sex off the table. It doesn't matter how you label this, depending on what it is speaking to, what connotation it's giving for you. But when we, in the in the CSAT training, certified sexual addiction therapist training, one of the things they talk about is there needs to be a period where we take all of the sexual components as much as you can. You still are a sexual being, but we're going to take it off the table for a little bit so we can help reset the brain. And so it's common to have a period where we're not going to masturbate, we're not going to have sex, we're not going to be lusting. We're going to work on taking that all off of the table for a season. Now I'm speaking not relationally. I mean, yes, all of this affects relationally, but I'm speaking just for the person who struggled with sexual addiction. Taking this all off the table allows your brain to have a period of a reset. And then just like you're talking about, Luke, we can start building in those healthy components, and you can start learning what healthy sexuality looks like. And a lot of times when we take it all off of the table, there's going to be some components and pieces coming up for you that you may not even know have existed. And I see this with my couples too, that I will see both partners start learning things and realizing something about them or things about themselves when they're not having any kind of sexual release. This is not a forever thing, but it can be a really good learning experience and healing experience and resetting experience for the person who has struggled.
Yeah. By the way, if y'all could, as we have this conversation, we already have in the Q&A some topics that are not around sex fast, but go ahead and use the Q&A to personalize this a little bit to yourself by saying, hey, what about this? Or what about this? Or around sex fast, so we can engage you in the conversation.
Also, I do want to say, there are other reasons for it. Like, and I don't know, Luke, your outline, so I don't want to go too far into this, but if you've been betrayed and you have your own reasons why you need to take or would like to take sex off the table for a while, we'll get to that too. I don't want you to feel like I'm ignoring you, but just as a foundational component for sex addiction, this is very common to take it off the table for a season.
And let's also speak to the wide, there's a whole bunch of different situations where when a partner is caught in sexual misbehavior, it's automatically taken off the table. And some of you might be thinking, why is that even considered like even a topic? Because for whatever reason, or you got the opposite side, which partner, the betrayed, feels obligated to fill that sexual component in the relationship just to help with manage the person's recovery journey. Or the addicted expresses needs or desires in this area because pornography is no longer available to them, and it becomes that much more important. So, you know, wherever you're at in this journey, maybe you've made it past it, maybe you're not even there to even think about it. It's totally appropriate wherever you're at, and hopefully there's something in there that this will be helpful for you.
Well, and really quick too, there's so many different responses. And so if yours doesn't fit perfectly into what we're talking about, please don't just take that as, oh no, something's wrong with me.
Exactly.
But another response is sometimes the partner becomes hypersexualized. This, are you still with me? I need to compete with these images in your head or with these other people. And so that can also be a season. I've actually seen quite a few women who will become hypersexualized for a season, and then they will go total opposite and just everything shuts down.
Yeah.
And so just however you respond is how you respond.
And Alana and I have been in both places. I remember early on in the journey, when she didn't really know much about masturbation. The one I tried to get sober, and she didn't know the extent of everything. She would actually try to help in this area. And this makes me really, really sad because I didn't have the ownership nor the accountability nor the transparency step up. And I have a lot of negative emotion around, and a lot of regret and sadness around the fact that I let her play the role of, hey, you know, in order for me to get this, it sure would be nice if, you know, you would be more available to me. Very painful to think about. And I don't know. Yeah. So There's so some of the why on why you would go abstinent contract, taking steps off the table, sex fast, as I mentioned before, that there is a need to begin to gain sexual self-mastery. And if you, and again, the betrayed, don't control in this area or don't try to manage to this point. And Alana, you can speak to this, please. But he needs to be able to gain sexual self-mastery. And in order to do that, sex and pornography use, and that those chemicals inside of the brain become so mixed and so melded that the relationship itself can become kind of messed up relationally because of what's happening in the brain. And when you pull that out, then it's easier to see things clearly as you introduce what healthy is. There can be a ton of healthy already inside of the relationship, you know, where it's not tainted, and that can be a really confusing part for the couple. Like, hey, what does your pornography past have to do with our current sexual intimacy? And some people pull it out in order to recognize how it's going to be healthy, bringing it back in. So often what men do is they leave the porn behind, but the sex becomes so much more important now. And this is where I call it, the spouse is now becoming the pornography. And man, I hated the way I just said that. The spouse is used in a way that the porn was being used, which is how to properly handle my emotions. You know, is sex about connection? Is about knowing what the other person, where the other person's at? Is about consent? Those things. Well, pornography isn't about any of that. So can sex show up in a healthy way, which has to do with those things? Again, consent, again, communication, awareness of what the other person is at, a mutual gratifying experience. And by the way, let me pause for just 1 second. Sexual intimacy can just be hard and difficult outside of addiction and betrayal. Such a difficult thing to manage too. So absolutely worth it, but very difficult to manage. Alana, you want to step in there at all?
Yeah, I just love that you said that, because I can't tell you how many books upon books upon books for couples who are not dealing with any type of infidelity or sexual betrayal, who are trying to heal elements of their sexual relationship. And so I just appreciate that, because there are so many components. We can have physical things, whether it be health related or just the way your body is made. We can have emotional, if you have trauma in your past, just past relationships, all of that can play into it, the current state of your relationship and how the two of you are able to connect, the whole intimacy triangle, all of those components play into it. There's so many different sexual disorders out there that have nothing to do with infidelity or addiction. And so it's just important to note that, I won't say everybody does this, but I did this big time for a long time, is I took everything and I was like, well, that's because of the addiction. Oh, that's the addiction. That's the addiction. That's the addiction. And as I have healed and as I've come along, I was able to start kind of going, okay, this definitely was impacted by the addiction. And here's another component that I have to also just recognize is separate, but impacting. And if you're not at the place that you're ready to tackle that type of work, that's okay. That was further down the road work.
And this is not on a checklist of things to do to be in recovery. Okay. So as we talk about a sex fast today, this is not something where you go like, oh my goodness, shoot, we're a year into this thing. We haven't done this yet. That means we need to do this in order to get it through. So we'll tackle this here in a second, which is somebody brought up. So when is this a good idea? Beginning of recovery later. So we'll tackle that here in just a second. But I just wanted to say, for both people, sex has to feel healthy and feel like it's not too important, but it's an important part of the relationship. Okay, so first thing we have to talk about the 44 faulty core beliefs of an addict, which one of the four is sex is my most important need. Okay, so sex is kind of like air, food, or water. Like if I don't have it, I will die. Now, y'all think I just exaggerated. Okay. And by the way, I'm going to share an experience with you that I have with the clients. And I treat this with the utmost respect and I honor this. And it's not something that I want to take light or anything like this because I really, really care about the people that I work with. And this is what the experience was. There was an opportunity where we recognized that sex needed to be pulled off the table and there was needed to be an abstinence contract. When I brought this up with the man, it was so hard for him and both of them. Okay. The fact that I noticed that they both ended up in tears, but he was in tears to begin with, pulling sex off the table. And, I think in my past, I would have judged that a lot. I've been like, dude, what is up with this guy? Like, he's in tears because sex got pulled off the table. One thing I wanted to recognize is she was also having a real hard time of it too, because of how much their relationship, they didn't know how to connect outside of sex. So what was happening was a complete deconstruction of their relationship. Now let me talk about him for a second before I talk about her. So what he felt in that moment was I don't know how to give love or be loved. I don't know how I will feel loved or accepted anymore if that's not a part. And that's the part I want to give respect to is this isn't so important for both people just because it's, whatever it might be, is because it's a part of the relationship that when you get pulled out, it deconstructs everything. Alana, you want to comment on any of that?
No, I was just so into what you were saying. I would say that is one of the number one things I see too, is that fear of how in the world will we connect? That's the only way we know how. And that's a whole nother topic, that intimacy triangle. But if that is our only way of connecting, that's at the top of the triangle. If you flip that triangle upside down, we don't have a nice firm foundation. We just have this wobbly top. And so I think I'm with you, Lucas. In the past, a long time ago, I would have been just like, man up or fine. Like, but it's real. And if we've had years and decades of only feeding this one area of the relationship, it can be kind of scary. This pullback of, we're already so disconnected and you're telling me we're going to disconnect more. Like, are you kidding me? How can that be helpful?
This should be the straw that finishes us off, right?
Yeah, all of those type of thoughts.
Oh, I don't know what
Straw that breaks the camel's back.
yeah, or nail in the coffin. I mixed them both up.
That's okay. It's normally I'm who's doing
Right?
me doing that. But so that's where there's certain pieces of this journey that you kind of have to trust the process and trust others who have done the research and who have worked with clients and who have seen success. And so what we want to do is, yes, we do want to pull back so we can go in and be creating something new, because we don't want to go back to the way things were. The way things were got us where we are today. So we want to demolish all of that. We want to bring in the forklift, bulldozer.
What's he going to use? I'm kind of excited to hear what you're going to say next.
My brain's going through construction equipment, but we want to bring in the construction equipment, bulldoze it all down, push it out, and then let's build in with the right tools and components. Also, and we don't have to do this yet, Luke. Luke doesn't know I want to do this, but can we at some point before we finish tonight, just talk about a little bit about what healthy sexuality and unhealthy sexuality actually looks like? Because I think that in and of itself, because a lot of us weren't raised to hear, like, look, if you're hurting your partner sexually, physically during sex, and they're not consenting to that, that's sexual abuse. I think putting some of those pieces, and it can be triggering, but it can be triggering if it's happening to you. But I think putting to words some of that is really essential.
Yeah, I don't know how we would come up with the time for that today, but we could talk about it a little bit.
Well, I have a list, so
okay. So
wherever you can fit it into your agenda.
Let's touch on some of these real quick, if that's okay with you, Alana. The people that have to do it.
Yep, you keep going.
So when is this a good idea? Beginning of recovery or later? So what this is a good idea is when you notice stuck points in the relationship. Like when you just like, I don't know, I'll just give you some random examples. When you start to hate your partner because sex exists, right? When you notice that when your partner says to you, and you'll notice I'm talking about either partner, the betrayed or the addicted. When the addicted goes like, this is like really important to me. Like, I don't even care if my wife wants to or not. I just want it. When you just again start to notice that it's getting in the way of connection, when it's getting in the way of closeness, or it's just become too important. So those are some pieces. This is a really good question. Should a sex fast be done with a therapist or each having a separate therapist? I am a really big fan of having somebody lead you along this journey. It is, I can't imagine Alana and I doing this without somebody like holding our hands. Because here's what happens, and this is a really endearing, wonderful part, but I can't tell you how many times I have to tell the betrayed, hey, do me a favor, don't work against me in this series, and I do it with a smile. Okay, don't work against me, because what happens is when your husband starts to show up in a way that is feels really safe for you, he's really emotionally connected with you, you want to be intimate with him. So I think it's understanding at the pace which you're moving through it, because what you don't do is you don't just go, all right, pulling sex off the table and that's it. Like, just that's what it is. There's steps and processes and places to go through this. So I would say oh, go ahead, Alana.
I was just gonna say, and steps and processes to re-engage.
Re-engage, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So if your therapist, her therapist and your therapist have a good working relationship to say, hey, this is the direction we're headed, great. If not, it could be with one person.
I would say ideally one person, because part of this reintegration is we want to be able to talk as a couple with somebody and to be able to process what's happening. So by all means, keep doing your individual work. But when I have a couple with me and we're in the middle of relearning or learning for the first time how to engage sexually, we can really dive in of, okay, what happened here? What was that message that you got in that moment? When she got triggered in the middle of you two snuggling for the first time and you put your arm around her and then she got triggered, how did you respond? What was that like when he responded that way? So really being able to let this whole journey be part of that healing process can be really beneficial. So I personally would say absolutely do it with one person, but continue your individual work.
And this isn't just, again, this is not just like, let's just pull sex off the table. The next question is what is the good amount of days? Thank you for asking that question. 45, 90. How do you know it's long enough? That is a great question, because it really depends on what's happening in the period of abstinence, in the period of learning how to reintegrate emotionally. Just exactly what's coming up. So it just depends. And I hate that answer. I hate it. I want to yell at the person when they say it just depends. So hopefully
this isn't a white knuckling it thing. We're just not like holding our breath for 60 days and then it's like, okay, green light again. The whole point of this is you really do want it to be a healing, learning, and gradually more connecting experience.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, I know, Luke, you do this, that you don't actually have a date in mind. Like, yes, like a rough estimate of, okay, I'm thinking we're going to maybe be going 30 or 60 days, but we're really going to take that week by week to see how the couple is responding, where the roadblocks are happening, where we may need to do some additional work, and where we're doing really good and we can move forward.
There was a person that put in the questions, can you give examples of the components? So I kind of forgot what we were talking about when you put that in there. So I'd appreciate if you do that, brother. Just throw that back in there with, and maybe it already got answered. If it got answered, then great. Let's see. Do you recommend doing a sex fast every so often, even after healing from betrayal and sobriety and actively working in recovery? So what my therapist said to me is he said, Luke, when you've gone through this and we're at the end of it, I think he said this during or maybe even after. He said that what happens is if Alana is going to be unavailable physically for any type of thing, whether she's just exhausted because of her career, she's got something going on with the kids, she's physically unable,
Issues. Yeah.
what happens is want your brain to be able to see it differently, and not lose that connection in the process. So, whether you throw in a sex fast every once in a while, I don't know. I'm having a hard time seeing necessarily the reason why you would do that, other than organic part of life needing to not do there and the brain not reacting quickly. By the way, I think that this is some version of getting healthy, kind of like losing some weight. And if you're like me, there's negative emotions that come from even mentioning that. But, understanding this, because it's a fluid part of our lives, it's going to ebb and flow, our sexuality and our relationship within sexuality. I feel like I'm cruising right through some of these, Alana. So
Well, so I'm sorry, my brain just went back to that question that was asked. I love what you just said there. And I just want to reiterate that absolutely, like as you get healthier, if there is a season, whether it be a week or a month or whatever, that sex isn't available, or we're choosing to take a break, or the other person can't do it for some reason, it doesn't rock your world. Like, yes, of course it's going to impact you, but there's not that same level. And I'm not saying every relationship has this, but in my couples who have sexual addiction, there's a ton of pressure and coercion and manipulation that can come around sex. Pouting, that tantrums is a hard word, but pouting, tantrums, guilt tripping, all of those things are really unhealthy sexually. Well, they're unhealthy anyway, relationally. But if we are still having those patterns, then that can absolutely be a time that says, whoa, okay, we actually do need to have a reset. Because again, we're having these unhealthy dynamics and we want to create something new and something healthier. And so if it's okay, Luke, I am going to read my list really quick because I think it's, yeah, I'm going to read my list because if any of these things are happening, it might be a signal to you that as a couple, we got to do something different. So, okay, so this is sexual abuse. Some examples of it: held down during sex without your consent, purposely hurt or hurting your partner during sex, forced to watch porn or look at sexual imagery, made to have sex with another person, told to accept another person being involved when you don't want to. Notice all of these have to do with different forms of consent. Pressure to allow naked and or sexual photographs or videos. And I'm so sorry if this is triggering, but I really feel like it's important that you know what healthy is and isn't. Forced to dress in a sexual way that you don't like, given a sexually transmitted disease, or given any type of drugs or alcohol with the intent to lower your ability to say no. Sexual coercion, pressure doing things even after you've said no. So if you have said, I'm not in the mood tonight, and they keep pressuring you, that's sexual coercion. Telling you what is about to happen has to remain a secret. Pushing you to do things even when you've made it clear that you're uncomfortable or afraid. Punishing you if you don't go along with what they want or their sexual desires, or just the fact they want sex. Making you feel bad you don't want sex when they are ill, tired, or injured. Insulting you in sexual ways or being called sexual names. Making you feel like you owe them sex. I see that one a lot. Insinuating bad things will happen if you don't do what they want. Getting angry with you if you refuse to do what they want sexually, or refusing to talk to you, sulking, or otherwise making you feel guilty. And I will tell you, and that one right there, refusing to talk to you, sulking, or otherwise making you feel guilty. Um, I would say that probably is hands down the most common that I see in relationships that have unhealthy sexual dynamics. So that's my list. If you are feeling massively triggered with that list, I want to first say I'm sorry. And if you're feeling massively triggered, the question I would have is it because pieces of that hit too close to home? And when we have sexual addiction, a lot of these things, not all of them, maybe sometimes all of them, but a lot of these things can show up. And I'm curious, Luke, because Luke and I didn't talk about going over this. I'm curious, you hearing this list and knowing your clients and your guys, what's your thought listening to that?
Well, I think it still even brings up a lot of emotion for me just because of how much our relationship existed in that, how much I brought into our relationship before, lack of consent, pushing, not, doesn't matter whether you're okay with it or not, just gonna get you to be okay with it. Uh, and also not even understanding or even getting that it's not okay to begin with, not understanding how unhealthy it was. I just didn't see it. I'm still wondering a little bit, just trying to gauge myself right now, where I'm at in the relationship. So I think there's so much inside of here that needs to be talking about. And I'm glad, Alana, you're addressing the triggers, because I'm thinking about how this is going to impact so many of you. And I'm hoping for the men. By the way, I did get called out for calling men addicted and women the betrayed, that label. So thank you for calling me out, for whoever did that. I think that's really cool of you that you would have said that, because I don't like labels, and that was me being in too much of a hurry to share something. So I appreciate you doing that. Yeah, so that's what comes up, Alana.
Yeah, I know for both sides that there are pieces of that that probably are really uncomfortable. And if your brain is wanting to just run with that, if you can grab a pen and paper, write down the pieces of it that really hit you, so that when later, when you're in a place that you can do some processing around that. And we've said this many times, but if you have a coach or a therapist taking something like this, okay, they said this one thing on this list, and I after that I couldn't hear anything else. Oh, that's like such good, rich things to dive into later. So write that down so you don't forget. Because a lot of times people will come to therapy and they're like, oh, I know there was something I wanted to talk about. So just have that list, write it down, even if you just go journal it.
Yeah. Okay, so we dive back into some of the questions, Alana. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yep.
So if we do, next question on the topic was, if we do have sex during our sex fast, what kind of an effect would that have? Is it best to reset? Yeah, I mean, like, I think for me in that journey of, okay, wait, let me stop, recognize that that's not something that I was, that I wanted to do. That wasn't the direction I was headed. What just happened? I'm thinking specifically for the man here. This is an experience where I get a chance to learn, try to drive away the shame, check in with my partner, see what's they're going on, what's coming up for them, and re-engage in the goal. Again, not necessarily so much because it wasn't a time bound experience as it was a processing slash looking at things differently, starting anew. Yeah.
I hear a lot of women have a big fear that when they're ready to engage sexually, or maybe middle of a sex fast, and then they choose to have sex, and then they're like, whoa, hey, that's not where I'm at. There's this big fear that their partner is going to be like, oh, good, now we're having sex, now we're going to have sex all the time. Or, okay, now we're okay. Everything's okay. And so there's this really big, legitimate fear that he's going to think, or she, that they're going to think everything's okay now. We're just fine. And it's absolutely, I think, imperative to be able to talk about that, okay, just speaking of, if you did have sex in the middle of your sex fast, okay, we did do that. And that's where I was yesterday, but today, this is where I'm still at. Or that doesn't mean that I'm healed. This doesn't mean that we're fixed. This is still where I'm at. And being able to vocalize that and have those type of conversations is really important. But I do want the partner who acted out sexually to know and hear how common and frequent and really scary that fear is, that they're going to think everything's okay and now the slate is clean, or that they're going to now be expected to do this all the time. And that holds a lot of individuals back from engaging in the relationship again, because it kind of falls into this like all or nothing thinking, or fear that will fall into that all or nothing.
Yeah. There was another person in the questions that put in what's the proper amount of time. I think that got answered, to abstain from physical contact. The one thing they did mention, that with the fact that it starts at hand holding and it ultimately leads to sex, and there is a progression there, and a lot of it is around a man recognizing that he can go to any point, and to at any point of being aroused with being connected to his partner, and recognize the fact that if there's not a connection happening, to be able to stop the experience and check in and then still be present. So that's why it's subtly brought back in, is so he can remain present in the experience of connecting sexually. Okay,
Can we speak to that really quick, just a little bit more? Because there is a big culture message that's like, well, once he's going, he's a freight train. You can't stop a freight train. And that messaging is so harmful to both people, because that makes him this message of he is powerless, that he can't control his sexual urges or tendency. And the reality is you absolutely can. No matter how far into the experience you're having, a healthy man who knows how to manage his sexuality can pull back. Doesn't mean he's not going to have feelings. It doesn't mean that he's not going to be impacted by that, but he can do the work he needs to and still be with his partner. That is possible. But for a lot of people, it's a lot of work to get to that place.
For sure. Alana, will you tackle this one? I'm currently in the middle of taking sex off the table. I've gotten to a point where sex isn't even desired. I've completely shut down and feel like our physical relationship is completely shut down. And by the way, I will comment, because I know this person, emotional from and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, brother, but they are emotionally connected. Okay, so just lack of the physical, because anyway. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, word of the day is it depends. You're going to hear us say that because everyone's a little different. So I'm going to give a generic answer and you see what fits and throw away the rest. But I do see people swing from, okay, I'm a sexual being and I'm really sexual, and that door is open, to, whoa, shut down. I'm not even thinking about it. And what I hope that you can find is not be so black and white, but find this healthy middle of, okay, if you've gotten to a place that you're not desiring it, well, are we, and this is some good processing questions of like, are you not desiring it because we've kind of shut it down and just closed that door? Are we not desiring it because you're really busy and overwhelmed in your life? Like, are you not desiring it because the connection is not happening the way you want it to? Healthy is in the gray. It's not in the black or in the white. And so this for you going through the sex fast, I might encourage you of, how do I start learning to embrace my sexuality and to let that door be open? and to do it in a way that's healthy. So if we've kind of swung over and we've shut that door, well, part of sexual reintegration is now learning how to open that door again, but then move forward in a way that's manageable and that we're processing through and that it's healthy. I don't know if that made sense. I don't know if that came out the way that I wanted it to. Are you with me, Luke? Did that make sense?
You had to ask that, huh? I was so focusing on a question in the chat. Are you with me?
Are you with me? Yeah.
Yeah, are you with me? Sorry, I was focused on a question in the chat.
That's okay. But in essence, I have seen, and in some men I've seen do where they're almost like afraid, like they're almost afraid of their sexuality being like a box, like sex is like dynamite and they're a flame. And if I get too close to it, that I'm just going to set off this big explosion. I can't manage that. So I'm going to stay as far away as I can. And that's the way that I'm going to try to manage it. And so like, shut it down. It's over there. I'm over here. That's not healthy either. For a season where we're talking about taking sex off the table, like absolutely. But a lot of this journey this is not where we're unpacking and living. Now, if you two as a couple have decided for the rest of our marriage, we never want to have sex again, and you two consent to that, and that's what you want, cool. But if you are interested in having a sexually healthy relationship together, then we really do want to look at how can we build this in? How can we learn to start finding and building and creating those opportunities for that physical contact?
I just want to take a time out for a second and just recognize the stuff that we're talking about is really, really difficult, really, really hard. So if you find yourself wanting to hang up on this call, or just wanting to, or if you are screaming at your computer, or if you're in tears because of this, we recognize how hard this part is, you know?
Well, and can I speak to the betrayed partners for just a minute too, because we've heavily focused on the person who has struggled with addiction or acted out sexually. We've heavily focused on that. But for the partner, there are so many emotions that go into this. We're talking about such levels of pain and vulnerability. And this is where the betrayal happened, was in not only the relationship, but that sexual relationship, which is even a higher level of vulnerability. And for a lot of our clients, where they've saved themselves sexually or done only certain sexual things with their partner, and then they're betrayed in this way that was so private and so intimate and so sacred to them, that adds a whole nother element to this. And so as we're going through this, we've talked a lot about what things the partner who has betrayed really needs to be thinking about and working on. But the betrayed partner, they also have their own things that they're working on. They're really listening to their intuition. They're listening to their body. They're recognizing when they feel safe and when they don't. They get to have a say on whether they want to engage sexually. Their body, and we talked about this last month, and if you weren't here last month, listen to the recording on that. But their body, if they're still in fight, flight, or freeze, that sexual part of their drive has been shut down. And so if they are still engaging sexually and their body is saying, no, 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 then they're forcing themselves, trying to power through, and that can become a self-betrayal. So part of this, taking sex off the table or doing an abstinence contract or a sex fast also can be really healing for the betrayed partner, because it gives them room and space to be able to start listening to their own body, to start engaging in ways that they feel ready, to also be working on these other ways of connecting. And so I just want to make it really clear. We have two individuals here who both are having a whole lot of feelings about this whole experience. And then we have all of the histories of them as individuals, and then the history relationally. So there are so many elements and components to this that make this hard and complicated. And so again, like we're speaking generically to a huge group that can't even see your faces. So please take what resonates with you and speaks to you. And if there's pieces that you go, that's not where we're at, or that's not our story, that's okay. Let those pieces go and really be so gentle with yourself, because I'm going to guess for a lot of partners, this is triggering a lot of shame. And for a lot of betrayed partners, this is triggering a lot of just triggers.
Yeah. And if you're the person who did the betraying, and you're like, I don't think this fits for us, that's okay that you decide that it doesn't seem like it, but definitely be supportive and open to what your partner's experience is in this conversation. So, and it's okay that it looks different than what yours is. What it becomes very concerning is when you are uncomfortable with the fact of your partner having a different experience, the betrayed having a different experience. Going like, that's just not the way I see it. Well, I don't think that's right. And putting it on the other person.
And we go as fast as the slowest partner. So if you feel like, oh, we're good, we're going to keep going forward, and your partner is going, I don't know if I trust, or I don't know if I can do that, we go as fast as the slowest partner. And this is going to be maybe hard to accept for some of you, but there's no finish line. There's no end goal that we're trying to get to. We're not just trying to get back to having regular sex. That's not the goal. The goal is we're learning what healthy sexuality looks like, and we're learning how to connect in fulfilling and long-lasting healthy ways. So you as a couple can be closely connected and can have a really healthy relationship.
Yeah, and the goal being finding that out with each other and not necessarily trying to fit some other mold that somebody else told you needed to be in. Hey, I wanted to comment on this one part that came in, and it says, or fear they will go elsewhere, or porn, masturbation, or adultery. And I thought that was really spot on. Of a lot of time, the person that's been betrayed shows up sexually out of fear that I don't know what'll happen if I don't go there. And that's one of the outcomes of the betrayal. So yeah, good. Thank you for putting that. Okay, so somebody put in, Luke, please finish your story. I have no idea what story I was on. I'm so sorry about that. That was put in like 20 minutes ago. So if you got one that you still want me to finish, just tell me which one it was. I'm gonna be happy to finish it.
And if I interrupted that story, I'm very sorry. We do that to each other. Some of the pros and cons of working with your partner, your spouse.
I say it's pro. What if the betrayed needs a break, but the addict doesn't understand? Holy moly. Okay. If the betrayed needs a break, but the addict doesn't understand. Okay. Okay, that was me. That was me. Totally not okay. I could not see that my spouse needed a break because my brain was so wired to understand what my needs were and not to see hers. So luckily I had a therapist that would jump in here and pulled sex off the table for us. And I gotta tell you, I have some emotions around this because this is my fear from having this conversation. My fear is that the person that's been betrayed sees a need for change and desires the need for change, and the other person just thwarts it and goes and just does not align with there needing to be something different, because there's no professional that's currently being worked with, or no professional at all that can do what happened for Alana and I. And I just want to state my fear. I just want to state my reservation for what might be happening right now, is just putting a woman or the person that's been betrayed in a situation of recognizing now what healthy is, and the husband just not wanting to go along with it. And I'm telling you, I'm speaking very, very directly Listen to the person you betrayed and what they need. Do not question them. Do not question them. Hear them and understand they're saying it for a reason, and get with somebody like me. It doesn't need to be me, but I can definitely refer you to somebody that it is, to seek to understand what your spouse is asking for, to understand it at a deeper level. Okay. If it doesn't make sense to you. All right. So that's all I have to say on that.
Well, and to the betrayed partner, all of your feelings are absolutely valid. You have been through something traumatic. And so if you need a time and a season to heal, however long that may be, you absolutely can have that. And you can have that even if your partner isn't cheering you on. Luke was not on the sidelines, like with pom-poms going like, yeah, you get it, girl, you got it. He was over in the corner in the fetal position going, I don't think I can handle this. And I wanted to run over to him in the corner and be like, okay, I'm so sorry. Like, forget I even said that, because I saw him hurting and I didn't want him to hurt. Well, okay, times I did. Times I was like, yeah, you be over there and hurt. And other times I'm like, that's not my nature. I don't want people to hurt. But I had to separate his response from what was healthy for me as an individual. And I needed space, and I needed a time to heal, and I needed to learn to listen to my own body. And when I engaged sexually, I needed to be the one saying, I am ready and I want to try this. I want to try to hold your hand. I want to try to sit by you in a movie. There was a season I couldn't do those things. I want to try to have sex again. And I don't know if I'm going to get cried and triggered in the middle. And that did happen. There was times that I was like, okay, I'm ready. And then we would be in the middle, and all of a sudden my mind would go to a thought, and all of a sudden light switch off, tears are going. And it was so incredibly frustrating, but I needed to learn that that was okay and have self-compassion for myself and recognize where I was. And so my challenge to the betrayed partners is really learn to listen to yourself and be self-compassionate with yourself as you're going through this journey, because really it does benefit the relationship. Because when both of us were ready and able to engage again, we were able to connect in ways and talk about things in ways that we weren't able to before. And even like that piece of it was a lot of learning, because we didn't know how to do that.
So, Alana, can we talk about timing for a second? So,
Yeah.
2 minutes before the hour, how long are we? I swear we go different every single time. How long are we going till? So we can let.
We usually try to do about an hour, but then we'll give it another 15 if we have a lot of questions. And it looks like we still have quite a bit.
So
So
no, we will not be offended if you jump off. So do your thing if you plan on an hour and you're not going to be here. So anyway, appreciate you being here. So wish we could say like hi face to face with so many of you. Okay, the other one that was really mentioned I loved was we talked about the betrayed, the person that's been betrayed's fear of, okay, if I'm not having sex with them, if I'm not whatever, what are they going to go back to? A man brought up what's the fear for them if we pull sex off the table. And I love what he said. He says fear was that they don't love me anymore if they need a break, because her agreeing to have sex was a confirmation that she still loved me. Heck yeah. Like right on. Love that you said that. What meaning do I give sex? And do you like that meaning, by the way? Are you okay with that meaning? You know, that's the only way that I feel loved. That's the only way that she can love me.
well, right there too, what you're saying, Luke, is that the only way? Meaning if she is doing all of these other things and saying it in all of these other ways, but my brain can't register it, my brain only registers that she loves me for having sex, might be something to process and dig into.
Yep. So this other personal one, I want to give the courtesy to answer this question because I know they put it in for a bit here. It was the 180% question. Do you see that in the chat?
Yes.
Do you want to touch on that one?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just going to read it out loud. It says, in the couple's roadmap to recovery, really quick, that is on our podcast and on our website in a webinar. The couples roadmap to recovery. So if you don't know what we're talking about, there's a whole episode on that or webinar. In the couples roadmap to recovery, there is a time where the addict or the person who struggled with addiction must give 180% to their relationship. This is a time where they need to put in real work to hold the other's pain, to rebuild trust and demonstrate real recovery. Why do you do that to me?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's at the very top. I'm sorry. I thought you were the one on the very top.
Okay, hold on. Just so you know, if you ever see my face randomly like scowl in the middle of our things, he loves to get rid of questions out of our Q&A while we're still answering them. And I like to use them as like a grounding reference point because I'll look at him till the question's over.
Sorry
So if
about
I'm
it.
randomly scowling, it's probably because he just took my question away. Okay. I found the other one. This is a time where they put in real work to hold the other's pain, to rebuild trust and demonstrate real recovery. This is vital to the repair process of a relationship. However, this stage is not a healthy long-term place for any couple. I agree with that. What do we do when there is no growth on the part of the spouse? When we honestly know we've put forth all the effort and dedication required, but she has made no progress in trusting me or improving her emotional regulation. Okay, so this one is a complicated answer because it depends. I have had some couples where the partner who acted out sexually was so sure that they were doing everything right, but what they didn't know was there were still ways that they were actually hurting their partner and not recognizing it. There were still ways of control. There were still ways of unknown manipulation. I'm not saying this is you. I'm speaking generally, and I'm going to go over a few of these, but unknown manipulation that was still happening. And so that he didn't recognize, or the different men that I've worked with didn't recognize that what they were doing was still damaging. So that could be an element. Another element is if there is any type of trauma in the past of either partner that's unhealed, that could be playing into it. Another option is we might not have given enough time for healing. Luke showing up and giving 180% was not a 2-month thing. It was not a 6-month thing. It was years. Now, in the grand scheme of our whole marriage, if we've been married now 20 years, him doing that for 4 years of it with a level of rupture in our relationship, yeah, like that could make sense. If we've had a whole marriage where we're together for 60 years and we spend 3 to 5 years of that on doing this 180, absolutely. And so that could be a component, is we're just not giving enough time. I do see the period of healing that we want it to take always takes longer than we want it to for both partners. Both. So patience. Now, all of those could be pieces of it. We also have some places, and I see this way more rare than the others, where the partner who has been betrayed is not interested in doing their own work. They're doing no type of healing. They're not getting therapy. They're not trying to do any work, and they have fallen into a place of either their bodyguard is taken over and they're just angry and they're shutting down, and it's just like, screw you, I hate the world, or a victim mentality of there's nothing I can do, I'm helpless, so I'm not even going to try. Neither of those places are fun. They're not comfortable. The majority of the time, I see clients who are like, I don't like this pain. I got to figure out how to get out of this pain. But if they've gotten to that place where they are choosing actively to not do the work, to not trust, then that puts you in a place of, you have to make a choice of, is that the type of relationship that I can stay in? But I would say, please don't go to make that choice or rush to make that choice unless we have done a significant amount of work with a professional to weed out all of those other areas. So I don't know your story. I don't know your situation. I can't speak to anyone individual. And really, when I have a client in front of me, I still am not going to tell them, I'm not going to say this is what you need to do, because that's really something only you can determine for yourself. What we have our power and control over, and this is for the betrayed or the person who's acted out sexually, our power and control lies with our own choices, our own choices, our own reactions, our own behaviors. That's where our power lies and how we respond. And so keep doing your work and getting healthier. And hopefully I gave you a few little avenues that you can maybe do some diving down in.
So I'm curious, I just have one thing I want to add to it, and just to ask this gentleman. Obviously it's going to be rhetorical because of our situation. I'm going to read one part again back. When we know, honestly know, we put forth all the effort and dedication required, but she has made no progress in trusting me or improving her emotional regulation. The question that comes up in my mind is, how empathic are you when you made that statement? How much empathy was there when you made that statement, when you wrote that down? So I think that says a lot about the situation.
Like gauging yourself, is that what you mean?
Yeah, so you can't tell a lot when you read something, right, guys? So I can hear a lot of pain in that, but I'm also thinking about you recognizing or noticing or at least observing lack of progress in her approving her emotional regulation and entrusting. So is there a lot of empathy in what you're seeing? Are you experiencing a lot of empathy for her in the situation, or is there other emotions tied in, which is disappointment, anger, resentment, those types of things? If there's more resentment, there's still a path to be traveled for you. So anyway, feel free to catch up with me on that stuff. So, but here's some pain there. Okay, so Alana, what other stuff do we want to tackle in here? I know here's this other one. So let me read it. As a man that has had a pornography masturbation compulsion from a young age, I do not know anything else. My sexual self has never been separate from my addiction self until recently. Good work. I put good work. He didn't put good work. I often question whether my sexual desires, preferences, feelings, etc. are normal, and if they have been tainted by my misbehavior. How do I find out what healthy sex and intimacy look like? Do I need to give up my sexual preferences because I am not sure if I can trust them? Oh, so good. Thank you so much. I'm gonna do a webinar on this one for sure. So I was asking the same question. I remember asking my therapist, so what does a healthy man's brain look like? And it's funny because I think I asked, what does a state president do? It's like or not a state president, I guess I should speak to the masses, a person higher up in church leadership, thinking that they had the perfect brain and that they did it the right way. Because of the level of shame that I had around my sexuality, I had to do a lot of searching to figure out what I was okay with and what fit inside my value system and what didn't. So what does healthy sex look like for me? It was a lot of stuff that Alana the opposite of what Alana talked about in that list, which is not having shame for my sexuality, which is being able to talk about it, being honest about my experience and transparent about my experience, really being able to respect where the other person's coming from. So once I went through those things, I found my own version of what healthy looked like. And I could pull out all my pornography and all my sexual misbehavior out of that to figure out what I was okay with. And I'll just tell you, it's really peaceful for me now, like really peaceful. And I am so grateful of the amount of peace I have around my sexuality and my sexual response in general. Just so much peace over it. And that took quite a while to get to that space.
So this was a follow-up to the anonymous attendee. It said, how can you expect a relationship to recover if you're giving one spouse permission to make their spouse put in 180% effort, which mathematically is impossible, which yes, I do talk about that it is mathematically impossible, for years at a time. Well, here's the thing. No relationship can heal without two individuals doing their work. So you can 100% do all of your work for the partner who's acted out sexually. But if you're a partner who has been betrayed, is not doing any type of work and is choosing not to, that can't heal a relationship. Relationships, whether they've been impacted or ruptured through infidelity or betrayal, they can't work without two people investing into a relationship. That's what makes it a relationship, and healthy is both people giving. And so if you know what it looked like for Luke and I on year one, on him doing 180% versus year two versus year three versus year four looked different. And the amount of trust that I gained looked different. It took a long time before I was able to recognize the trust that had been gained. It took a long time before I was ready to let him start knowing about the trust that I had gained, because there were so many fears and so many worries and insecurities around that. But ultimately, the thing is when I'm talking with individuals, we are looking at, okay, over the last 3 months, have we seen progress? Over the last 6 months, over the last year? Ideally, not ideally, like we should, for the couple to be healing, we should be seeing progress. Now, progress may not look huge. It may be this like little snail's pace, but we do want progress forward. And so you have to have both people doing their work for the couple to really heal.
Yeah. And also for the person that's done the betraying, you don't get to pick the timetable in which she is ready to do her work. So that's going to be something where being patient along the journey for in a space that there can be a significant amount of pain before there's recognition on the healing that needs to take place. So if Alana, one of the things I'm thinking about is if I heard you say, which is like, okay, she's got to step up, right? She's got to do something. If that's what you took from that, that's not exactly what was said. Just speaking to the man brain there. Okay.
That being said, sometimes this is triggering for people. So hopefully I'm not going to end on it, everyone being triggered, but divorce has to be an option, because if divorce is an option, then it allows us to choose whether to be there. And so you absolutely, like each one of you are here and listening, have the choice whether to be in your relationship or not. And your brain's going to give you a million reasons why you don't have the choice. But the minute we don't feel like we have a choice in something, then we feel powerless and we feel trapped. And when we feel powerless and trapped, we tend to act less within our values and integrity. And we tend to stall out ourselves. So if you are choosing to stay in the relationship and they're choosing to not do their work, own that choice. I'm choosing to stay here. I'm choosing to be patient, and I'm choosing to have hope that they'll choose to start doing their work, and just own that's where you're at. If you're in a place that you're questioning, I don't know whether I can be here or not, but I'm here today, own that. But make sure that you stay in a place of empowerment around I am choosing my own course. So you don't have to give 180%. Nobody has to. But if you want to, and you want to give the relationship every fighting chance, then absolutely choose to give 180%, give it every fighting chance. And then we have to recognize that sometimes that just, it may not be. We have to let go of the outcome. But you can also know that you have done everything in your power if you come to that and you choose something different.
So let's end with this one because I really want to make sure it gets hit. This woman, I'm going to just paraphrase it. She's about to have a baby. Congratulations. She recognizes there's been some one-sided sex, and it would be nice to have a break before and after the baby, or after the baby. She doesn't want her husband to feel punished with a break. And just want to relate a little bit of adding pressure around timetables that my wife needed from her health. And I just want to tell you that you absolutely, sex needs to be a mutually enjoyable / connecting experience. And if health isn't there, and it's also not about what you're feeling, don't self-sacrifice for the other person. It will damage the relationship, and it will damage the intimacy that already exists. And there can be some heavy processing around that if that's, if if a husband is not on board for that experience. And you get to keep your own emotional safety. You get to have it be the priority there. But we're always around to do some processing with you if you need it. Okay. Everybody, wonderful to be with you. Thank you so much for all your vulnerable questions. Just really, really appreciate time and energy. It was fun to see the size of a group tonight. And Alana, you got anything to say?
Just whenever we talk about sexual reintegration, we hit on a lot of trigger points. And so I just have a lot of empathy tonight for both partners. And I just know that it can be hard. And so please be extra gentle with yourself, and do whatever processing you need to around any topics that came up that were hard. And just know Luke and I are absolutely just in this journey with you. It's not easy and it's complicated, but this type of work, whether it be in this relationship or a future relationship with the same person or with a different person, you're really laying the foundation for a healthier future. And all of these healthy tools that you're getting are not only going to benefit you in every relationship that you have moving forward, but naturally it impacts those around you. And so if you have children, your children are going to start picking up on these healthier tools, and your coworkers are going to start picking up on these healthier tools. So this work that you're doing is so valuable and essential, no matter the outcome. So keep going in this work, and just thanks for hanging out with us on a Sunday night.
Yeah, we're absolutely here for you. So please reach out to us. Do not do this alone. We want to be a support to you and finding any type of support that you need. Okay. Have a good evening, everybody. Talk to you later.